on to the next delegation.
Our next delegation, Mr. Al Gray, regarding the CSRA's TIA 2010 regional government as it relates to Augusta projects.
And if you could keep it to 5 minutes, please, sir.
Mayor Copenhaver, gentlemen and lady of the commission, today let's go down the road of good intentions known as TIA 2010. Here's a road sign that Commissioners Bowles and Lockett tried to install on this twisted road before we got to this fiasco junction. This program has gone structurally bust in the 13-county CSRA region to the tune of $80 million to $140 million. Revenues are nearly 10% short versus budget. The investment projects cost are worse. They're now being reported at $538 million, but those are 2011 costs. They stood at $630 million when TIA was passed. Worst of all is that the higher number bore increases of 2% a year, but the cost of early projects is really increasing more than 5% a year. What happens to Augusta and its partner counties when funds run out in 8 years? Augusta gets 63% of Phase 1 money, so the other counties could see Augusta's early projects eat up their funding. Distrust grows from Augusta swapping projects between phases. Augusta was permitted to move 2 Berckmans Road projects from the last phase to the second phase, but has a side deal with the Augusta National Golf Club for a loan that moves the main project to Phase 1. The amount funded is just the $16.7 million base cost, 2011 cost of that project. When the real costs come in, those projects could cost $2 million more. If the funds are capped at the $16.7 million, Augusta bears that cost. If the escalated costs are allowed to Augusta, we and the other counties will bear that cost. The Nationals project's overruns mean promises to the people get dropped. Here and throughout the region, already there have been broken promises. $7.5 million as a separate project for municipal transit was promised, but it didn't get a dime in 2013. The arrangements with Augusta and Augusta National are of dubious legality. Nothing in TIA 2010 provides for a private entity to interject itself to secure earlier funding. The TIA Citizens Advisory Panel we citizens were promised had oversight wasn't even allowed to vote on the changes. What are the Berckmans right-of-way, which is a TIA allowable cost? The proposed land swap with the National could be a net payment to Augusta that appropriately belongs to the regional fund. Then how can you separate the complete cost of all the options the National is requesting, like tunnels, from the TIA portion of the work? Finally, there's a matter of trust. We found we can't trust Augusta. The National paid $1.9 million an acre for its last purchase, yet the city's giving up 13 acres bordering the course itself with no attempt to get the National to pay, not loan, the $20 million or more their project will cost. Then look at the Highlands Avenue project, where you're using 90% and other funds over and above TIA to meet the contracted price. All counties were to report all costs, including other sources, but Augusta didn't. How many other games is Augusta playing with the rest of us? In February, reports flew out about the TIA success here. The press used a deceptive TIA funding list that really had large amounts of non-TIA funds. Today, legislators are meeting in Atlanta over transportation thinking this disaster actually works. Let's douse that notion by loudly demanding concrete action to secure that the state guarantee of funding we heard about in the TIA campaign actually is there. For the Augusta National, doing business with the last Augusta administration was high risk. Pay for your project to get free of the embarrassment now.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Okay, any question? Commissioner Lockett, then Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Mayor, I don't really have a specific question, but I just want to applaud Al Greer again for doing so much work that should be done here in Augusta, Richmond County is not being done. But I appreciate you, I really do.
Thank you, Mr. Lockett.
Commissioner Williams, then Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Mr. Gray, I'm listening to you and I'm listening carefully, but I'd like to know where you get your numbers from. I need some more, I guess, information to wrap my head around the numbers that you just brought out. Can you enlighten me on how this get to this point, or how your numbers get to where they are?
Well, in the packet of information that I put out with a picture of the Augusta National's entrance on Berckmans Road, there's a base case growth scenario that it came out at the time of the vote, and just about all of the regional commission and discussion centered around this set of numbers, which came out at about $841 million that they expected in funds. And if you took 75% of that, goes into this projects list that I'm talking about. So 75% of that comes back to $630 million. And they had a developed list that came back to that $630 million. But for some reason, DOT has decided, when they're the administrator for this project, they get $10 million to administer this project, by the way. And they've got a website in which they're reporting the numbers. So the rest of the numbers come from there, and also the Georgia Finance and Investment Commission reports. In 2013, the collections were $59 million versus about $71 million that were projected, and this year they're tracking on about $64 million versus $74 million that were projected. So you're looking at a pretty sizable bust there. But the big story is the project cost side, because DOT is reporting base 20. They say it's base 2011, but those numbers are actually 2010 numbers. And then you take the Riverwatch Parkway extension that Columbia County and Richmond County are doing, I guess, jointly. That project was supposed to be budgeted. It was budgeted at $30.7 million, but it bid out at $34 million. So that's a 10.3% increase in just 2 years. So the numbers aren't looking good there. Another handout that Mr. Ladson's here, and he did a wonderful job at the time these projects were moved around. And it's a schedule that is kind of the second through maybe fifth pages of your packet. And Mr. Ladson is showing the numbers as they were in the original budget. And he's actually showing those higher numbers that would total back to that $630 million. He's showing $277 million for Richmond County. So you see that's a pretty big chunk of what the total would be. And then the other pages that he's very wonderfully prepared, it shows how much Richmond County is now getting, the different bands or phases of this funding. And so it shows where these projects have been moved, but the numbers are smaller because he's going along with the DOT method and just using the base cost.
Let me say this, Mr. Gray. Now, this was a tax that the voters voted on. This wasn't a tax that this commission implemented. The tier was one that a lot of counties chose not to, and we at Richmond County decided to vote on. Is that right?
Well, 9 out of the 12 regions in the state voted it down. In the CSRA region, the 2 counties that I'm active in, Lincoln County and Columbia County, voted it down. But we're stuck in our projects, and this is one of the reasons I'm upset, is the projects that we have are in the last 3 years. 150 million of the 180 million that Columbia County's got in the last two phases. In McDuffie County, it's worse. 25 million of their 28 million is in the last 3 years, and it looks like that's not going to happen. And the biggest thing, I mean, that really would be an offense to me, is there's a picture in here, a schedule in here. It's from the TIA website. And it says active and completed TIA construction projects. And it's showing Wright-Spurner Road in Augusta is 19 million, but there's only 2 million of TIA funds in there. Old Petersburg Road, this is where there were 3 news reports that went across the state saying that $34 million of TIA funds were being used. But the real TIA funds are only 20 million. So there's a lot of untruth out there and propaganda that's going on that needs to be dispelled, across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and before I recognize Mr. Guilfoyle, I do want to say, Mr. Gray, with all due respect, I think very highly of our engineering department. I think they're doing a tremendous job, And to cast aspersions on them and say they're trying to put out propaganda, they are professionals, and I don't believe they would do that.
Absolutely. Let me clarify that. I didn't mean Mr. Ladson and your engineering department. I'm talking about the DOT component in Atlanta that's been paid $10 million to administer this project and are putting out these numbers on their website. Mr. Ladson, as I was trying to say, actually did a wonderful job of tying everything back, and he just did a perfectly wonderful job. So, you know, I please don't misunderstand.
Well, thank you, sir, and we found a point we agree on. We both think very highly of our engineering department. Mr. Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Locke and me was trying to decide who gave this to us, but it was apparent when you started showing it, which I will pass this on to our engineering department. Augusta's considered a donor county, is that correct, with the TIA?
That's true. The original projections were that you were going to give up about $59 million on the 25% component that goes to the other counties. It was kind of like a bribe to get them to go along, otherwise they never would have done it.
Okay, and what are we giving up now?
Since the revenues are down, you know, if you're down 10% across the board, then it's going to be, you know, a little bit over 53 million.
Okay. I was steadily writing down while you were speaking. You spoke about if Augusta bears the cost if a project overruns its original bid. Anything above and beyond Augusta will have to pay for it?
Well, that's a decision we can't get out of. We haven't been able to get out of DOT. I asked my chairman to go look into it, and he said they really didn't know at this point. But, you know, if like on the Berckmans Road thing, if it's 16.7 million and that's all you get under this transfer arrangement, then you're on the hook to make up that difference when it overruns. Whereas if you are allowed to get that project started and you experience overruns and TIA has to fund those overruns, and that comes out of the pot for the other counties like McDuffie County at the end, they'll come up short.
Okay. I'm going to talk to Steve and AB in regards to, you had brought up the 13 acres given to Augusta National, the guaranteed TIA money. Now, where they had cut us 10%, it's not done on a local level for sure. It's done on the state level. Is that correct?
Well, it's the collections in the 13 counties of the 1% sales tax are that much short.
Okay, the projection was off.
The projection was off, and as Ms. Davis, I think, noted it to the newspaper last week on a separate matter of the tax increase, moving the auto tax from a sales tax to a property tax just hammered revenues, and so did this energy tax that's being phased in. The numbers they put in there were about less than 50% of the revenue lost in those exemptions.
Al, I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate your kind remarks to our engineering department. They are a good staff, a good department that I actually lean on quite a bit. Thank you.
Well, this was for the benefit of the other counties. They're going to hear from me more than you will, believe me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fenoy?
Mr. Gray, you mentioned the projected revenues that was supposed to have been generated and the actual revenues, and you said we were running about, 10% short?
Yes, it was hideously short. It was 18 at one point, but it's narrowed the gap some.
Okay, and I guess my question is, Richmond County is still getting 25% of whatever revenues is generated. We're not getting the projected revenue.
You're getting the 90% that's been actually collected. I mean, you're getting 25% on the discretionary funds. I guess that's the question. The 25% funds separate from what I've been talking about in this presentation. But that 25%, as Mr. Guilfoyle said, you're getting the 25% less the 50-something million dollars over 10 years that was allocated to the other counties based on highway miles and population. And it's a complicated formula.
Okay, but the other counties, including Richmond County, are getting their percentage of the revenues that's generated, even though the total amount is not what.
Right. And that's a fairly fluid process. The Georgia Finance and Investment Commission, it goes straight to them and comes straight to the counties. It doesn't go back to DOT, which it does for some of the other counties on the project list of 75%.
Okay, so even though the other counties are losing out because of the lack of revenues that are generated, but Richmond County is losing out also.
Yes.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, on to the consent agenda, please.